My name was Farid. I was a respected Quran teacher, a beacon of knowledge in a rigid Islamic school tucked away in the heart of Saudi Arabia. To my students, I was not just an instructor. I was a guardian of a faith that seemed unshakable, but inside, I was a mere shadow, masking my doubts behind a veil of compliance. I led prayers, recited verses, and preached obedience, yet deep in my soul, a restless void gnawed away. Then came the darkness. An accident, unexpected and unforgiving. In those agonizing moments, I slipped into a realm beyond life, a suffocating void where fear and silence reigned. And there, in the bleakness, light broke forth. A figure emerged, radiant and commanding, a figure I never expected to meet, Jesus. He didn't speak in condemnation. He whispered truth, unveiling a cosmic struggle that eclipsed all I had known. I witnessed the confines of my faith crumble under the weight of a larger deception, one that wove itself through not just my life, but through the very fabric of society. It was a revelation so profound, so terrifying, that it shattered my understanding of existence. What I saw next was the essence of a mission, a summons that called me to break free. Everywhere I looked upon returning to consciousness, I saw chains of fear and dogma holding my people captive. But in that moment of revelation, I felt a surge of purpose awakened within me. I was not alone. Others were waking up, questioning, yearning for truth in a world riddled with lies. So here I stand, not just as Farid, but as a messenger of the freedom I stumbled upon. You might be in a similar predicament, grappling with your own feelings of doubt and longing for something more. I urge you to listen closely, for what I will share tonight could change everything. Before we dive into this journey of awakening, I invite you to comment below, where are you watching from and what time is it where you are? Your voices matter. And if you love Jesus, subscribe to Truth from Beyond. Do not let the opportunity slip to witness the next wave of revelations that could set your spirit free. In the confines of the strict Islamic school where I spent my formative years, every lesson echoed with doctrine while questioning was met with silence. The atmosphere was heavy, charged with an unspoken fear that gripped the hearts of students like a vice. I was educated under oppressive rules in a conservative city in Saudi Arabia, where obedience reigned supreme and deviation from the prescribed path was unthinkable. Each day, I learned to suppress my doubts, to silence the flickering curiosity that demanded answers beyond what I was taught. The only growing certainty I felt was that my life was carefully scripted, predetermined by forces far larger than myself. But then, everything changed. One day during a routine lesson, an overwhelming sense of despair washed over me. The weight of oppression felt almost palpable, constricting my ability to think clearly. When the classroom door closed, I felt as if it had sealed away any remnants of freedom or hope. I thought of the future that awaited me, and panic twisted my stomach into knots. As these thoughts spiraled, I suffered a panic attack that rendered me momentarily unconscious. It was in that darkness that I experienced a near-death experience, the kind that forever changes the course of a life. In that state of liminality, I found myself in a vast, desolate space, a dark desert that mirrored the emptiness I felt within. Suddenly, before me stood Jesus, radiant and full of love. His presence lit up the darkness surrounding me. "You are not meant to live like this," he said, and in that moment, I felt the layers of oppression begin to peel away from my soul. He revealed to me the profound truths hidden beneath the surface of my existence, the hidden agenda that sought to perpetuate fear and obedience while stifling our true potential. I felt an awakening within me, a realization that my life could be lived differently. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. As he spoke, the visions began to flood in. I was shown how the elite manipulated religion to control masses, how the spiritual war extended beyond mere belief systems into the very fabric of our societies. I saw the divisions sown amongst people, wars fought in the name of righteousness that blinded us to our shared humanity. The revelation was overwhelming. How had I not seen it before? My heart raced as Jesus illuminated the path forward, one that demanded courage and strength to challenge the deception that had shackled me and countless others. This moment became my compass, pointing me toward a truth that I had unknowingly hungered for. When I returned to my body, I awoke with a profound sense of urgency. No longer could I live in silence, bound to an existence dictated by fear. Each revelation I had received demanded action. I began to explore the world around me with new eyes, questioning everything I had accepted without thought. I sought out others who had left behind similar chains, forming connections that felt like lifelines. Sharing our stories, we began to forge a community built on love, understanding, and a collective commitment to challenge the oppression that enveloped us. Despite being labeled as heretics by those I once called family, I felt liberated, a warrior in a spiritual battle, armed with the truth and ready to fight for the awakening of others. The journey ahead promised to be fraught with challenges, but I was ready to embrace it, driven by the revelation of Jesus and the truth that had set me free. As a respected Quran teacher, I was often seen as a pillar of my community. At 29, my life was a carefully constructed facade. I followed the teachings and fulfilled my duties, guiding young minds in our conservative city. But beneath that disciplined exterior, I felt an increasing emotional emptiness that clawed at my spirit. Each prayer, every sermon I delivered felt mechanically rehearsed. I was caught in a relentless cycle of obedience that left little room for the genuine connection I yearned for. The tension within me grew, a storm brewing in silence while everyone around me saw only the unwavering commitment of a devout teacher. Late at night, as the world around me slept, I found myself wrestling with doubts that had accumulated over the years. Where was the joy and fulfillment that should accompany such dedication? The questions multiplied, and I felt trapped in a belief system that seemed to provide answers yet offered me none. I began to wonder if the traditions I had upheld blindly were rooted in a hidden agenda that benefited the elite, while deceiving those like me who sought truth and solace. It felt as if a chasm was widening between the life I lived and the spiritual awakening I craved, each passing day accentuating the disconnect. This internal struggle culminated in a moment I could never have anticipated. It began like any other day, but as I prepared for my afternoon lessons, a wave of despair swept over me. I could feel my heart racing, each beat echoing the panic that threatened to consume me. I collapsed, my vision blurred, and darkness enveloped me. As I slipped into unconsciousness, I endured a near-death experience that shattered the boundaries of my understanding. I floated in a state of weightlessness, unbound by my earthly concerns, and in that profound void I encountered Jesus. There he stood, vibrant and full of compassion. Farid, he called my name, and with that simple utterance, I felt the very fabric of my soul ignite. In his presence, the burdens I had carried dissolved away. Jesus began to reveal truths to me that were hidden beneath layers of dogma and tradition. He showed me visions of the spiritual war, waged not only within my own heart, but in the lives of countless individuals trapped by the shackles of oppression and obedience. I saw how the elite manipulated religion to maintain control, weaving deception into the very teachings I had devoted my life to. My once unshakable beliefs crumbled as the light of truth illuminated the darkness I had accepted for so long. As my encounter with Jesus deepened, I realized that this awakening was more than a personal journey. It was a divine calling to rise against the deceptions that had long held me captive and to embrace a new mission. I was meant to share these revelations with others who felt the same emptiness, a voice for the silenced, a guide for those yearning for spiritual freedom. The urgency of the moment flooded my heart. I understood that by awakening to the truth, I could help others free themselves from the lies they had inherited. This revelation compelled me toward action, igniting a fierce determination within me to confront the hidden agendas that governed our lives and liberate those who had lost their way in the shadows of deception. Ultimately, I realized I had a responsibility to champion love and truth. Emerging from that experience, I felt renewed and invigorated, ready to challenge the confines of my previous existence. My journey toward liberation would not come without its challenges, but I now possessed the clarity and purpose I had been seeking. The path ahead was illuminated by the revelations I received, granting me the courage to step out of the shadows and boldly proclaim the truths that had awakened my soul. No longer would I remain silent. The world needed to know that there was another way. I resolved to embrace this calling with every fiber of my being, knowing that the spiritual war was far from over and my voice could make a difference in the lives of so many still trapped in deception. As I participated in the prayers each day, I felt an increasing sense of emptiness wash over me, a void that seemed to grow with every recitation. The words, once filled with meaning, now felt hollow and devoid of life. I was Farid, a respected teacher of the Quran, yet I questioned my faith in ways I had never dared to before. It was as though a thick fog had rolled in, obscuring the clarity I once had about my beliefs. Each moment I spent in prayer, surrounded by fellow worshippers who seemed to find solace, only deepened my internal struggle. I longed to share my doubts, to voice the questions that gnawed at my spirit, but fear of judgment silenced me. At night, sleep became elusive, and when I finally succumbed to exhaustion, my dreams transformed into unsettling visions. I found myself in vivid landscapes, often dark and chaotic, symbolizing the turmoil that churned within me. In these dreams, I could feel the chains of obligation binding me, seeing my heart break under the weight of expectations placed upon me by family and tradition. Disturbingly powerful, these dreams connected me to a longing for freedom that felt so close, yet so far away. I woke each morning with a sense of dread, burdened by the realization that my life was slipping through my fingers, entrapped by a spiritual war one could neither ignore nor fully understand. Every dream was a revelation, a reflection of the growing disconnection between my life and the truth I sought. I began to question everything. How could a God of love allow such chaos and oppression in the world? Why were we taught to follow blindly, to suppress our questions and fears? These thoughts clashed violently with the teachings I had devoted my life to, creating an internal struggle I could no longer bear. The heaviness became unbearable, and I sought refuge in the solitude of my room, desperate for answers that felt just beyond my grasp. It was during one particularly restless night, as I was caught in the tailspin of anxiety and doubt, that I slipped into a near-death experience. In that suspended moment, I found myself in a vast, dark desert. Fear clung to me like a shadow until suddenly, Jesus appeared before me, radiant and full of compassion. His presence felt like a warm embrace, rushing the cold isolation from my heart. Farid, he called, and with his words came the light that illuminated my soul. In that sacred encounter, he revealed the hidden agenda of oppression, showing me the manipulation of truth that permeated our society. Through his revelations, I witnessed a world fueled by deception, where the elite crafted narratives to control and divide us. The spiritual war was not limited to individuals searching for faith. It was a battle waged by powers intent on maintaining the status quo, suppressing those who dared to awaken. I understood in that moment that my own struggles were intertwined with those of countless others, seeking liberation from chains they could not see. My life was unfolding as part of a greater tapestry, each thread representing the desperate need for awakening in a world overshadowed by darkness. I returned to my body, invigorated yet terrified. With the clarity of that encounter, I knew I could no longer remain silent, trapped within the confines of my former beliefs. The truths Jesus revealed to me demanded action, a commitment to share what I learned with others who felt the same emptiness that had haunted me. Stepping onto this new path felt daunting, acknowledging that the journey towards the truth was laden with risks. Yet the weight of the spiritual war around me compelled me to immerse myself in the mission ahead. I wasn't merely seeking my own truth. I was called to be a voice for those still bound by deception, to help guide others towards their own awakening in a world that desperately needed change. The car accident happened in an instant. One moment I was driving through the familiar streets of my hometown, and the next, everything went black. It felt as though I was catapulted into a void, a heavy blanket of darkness enveloping me completely. I couldn't feel my body. I was neither here nor there, suspended in a realm devoid of sound or sensation. As I floated in this oppressive emptiness, an overwhelming sense of despair began to creep in. I realized I was trapped in a spiritual war, a battle between the life I had lived and the truths I had long ignored. In that suffocating darkness, I felt utterly lost until, suddenly, a brilliant light pierced through the void. It was not just light, it radiated warmth and love, filling the emptiness with its vibrance. As the light grew brighter, I saw a figure emerge from it. Jesus, standing before me with an expression of profound compassion and understanding. Farid, he called softly, but with an authority that resonated in my very soul. In that moment, I felt a peace I had never known. It was as if all the burdens I had carried in life had been lifted, and I was invited to witness a revelation that would change everything. Jesus shared insights with me that illuminated the spiritual battle I had experienced throughout my life. He revealed the hidden agenda behind the teachings I had followed so fervently. I saw how the elite manipulated faith to maintain control, creating divisions among people to serve their interests while many remained in darkness, unaware of the deception that governed their lives. As he spoke, I felt the weight of my past beliefs unraveling, replaced by a dawning awareness of the truth. This wasn't merely a personal revelation, it was a collective awakening, a call to recognize the forces that sought to keep us entrapped in fear and conformity. The visions rolled out like scenes in a film, presenting the larger picture of human suffering orchestrated by those in power. I saw how the lies propagated by religious and political leaders resulted in wars and suffering, perpetuated by the very systems that claimed to offer salvation. In that moment, it became clear that my own struggles had a purpose: to awaken others to the reality of their imprisonment. Jesus urged me to become a voice for those silenced by fear, to challenge the status quo of complacency that plagued our world. He instilled a sense of urgency within me, reminding me that the spiritual war was not just a struggle for me, it was a battle for the souls of countless individuals yearning for truth. As the light began to fade, and I felt the pull back to my body, I realized I was forever changed. I awoke from the coma with a clarity that shook me to my core. The revelations I had received during my near-death experience became a fire within me, igniting a fierce desire to share the truth I had witnessed. I understood that I must speak out against the deception that had held me captive for so long. Every living moment since that encounter felt infused with purpose, the calling to liberate others from the same chains I had struggled against. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but the urgency to act, the urgency to awaken, propelled me into a reality I was now ready to face. When I awakened from that coma, I thought I would finally have the chance to carve out a new path filled with light and purpose. Instead, I was met with the stark reality that my transformation came at a heavy price. The moment my family learned of my departure from Islam and my embrace of what they called a heretical faith, I was labeled a traitor. Their faces, once filled with love, twisted into expressions of disbelief and condemnation. The shift was immediate, and the consequences were devastating. I was no longer Farid, their devoted son. I was an outsider, someone who had shattered the ties that bound us together. The isolation was suffocating. Every family gathering became a reminder of what I had lost. The laughter, the warmth, everything felt like a cruel reminder that I no longer belonged. When I looked into the eyes of my loved ones, I saw disappointment mixed with fear. They believed I had been led astray by a hidden agenda, manipulated by forces beyond my comprehension. Each passing day, the guilt gnawed at my insides. How could I have chosen this path when it meant causing so much pain to those I cared deeply about? The turmoil grew within me, a grappling between my newfound truth and the remnants of my previous identity. Loneliness enveloped me like a thick fog. I would sit for hours in my room, staring at the walls, replaying memories of simpler times. The spiritual war one had felt during my encounter with Jesus had quickly morphed into a battle within my mind and heart. I longed to ask my family for their forgiveness, to make them understand the revelation I received in that dark place. Yet, the words never formed on my lips. I feared that any attempt to explain my experience would only deepen the rift between us. My internal conflict became a cycle of shame and despair, where I felt trapped between two worlds. In those quiet moments of reflection, I'd often recall the bliss and clarity I experienced with Jesus, his presence offering a love that was unrelenting and pure. I realized that in my journey, I was not only seeking my own liberation, but also being called to help others who lived under the same deception, shackled by fear and conformity. But how could I lead others when I felt so lost myself? I thought of the stories I had heard about women and men struggling for freedom from oppressive customs. They were fighting their own battles, often in silence. I had believed my faith was solid, but underneath it all, the fissures of doubt and dissatisfaction echoed loudly. Despite the pain, a flicker of hope stirred within me, ignited by the truths I had uncovered. I knew I had to take a stand, to speak out against the manipulation and deception that kept people in chains. I began to find solace in online communities of like-minded individuals, people who had faced their own awakenings. In their shared stories, I caught glimpses of understanding, support, and the collective pain of loss. Their journeys mirrored mine, and in them, I found a spark of courage to confront my family and community. I felt a sense of urgency welling inside me. The world needed to know that there was another path, one illuminated by the truth and love of Jesus that had set me free. As I envisioned this next step, an internal struggle persisted. The fear of further rejection and the risk of being ostracized loomed large, but I could not ignore the calling that pulsed within me. I was ready to embrace this new chapter, to share the revelations that had forever transformed my life. Through sharing my story, perhaps I could inspire others to question their beliefs, to seek the truth hidden beneath the layers of tradition. And while the path would be fraught with challenges, the urgency of my mission would propel me forward into the unknown, eager to join the spiritual war that demanded to be fought, both for myself and for those still trapped in deception. In my clandestine quest for truth, I found solace in the pages of the Bible, a book I had once been conditioned to see as foreign and contradictory. Each verse was a revelation, awakening a hunger within me that had long been stifled. I would sneak away, hiding in corners of my home where prying eyes couldn't find me, poring over the stories of Jesus and his teachings. I discovered a profound sense of peace in his words, a contrast to the fear that had gripped my heart for so long. The teachings I absorbed offered a sense of belonging, something I had desperately sought while grappling with the weight of my family's expectations and the oppressive norms of my community. Alongside my exploration of Scripture, I discovered a treasure trove of testimonies from former Muslims who had also experienced an awakening. I listened intently to their stories, nodding along as they recounted feelings and experiences that mirrored my own. They spoke of the spiritual war that had raged inside them, caught between the shackles of tradition and the liberating love of Jesus. Their paths, steeped in struggle and pain, resonated deeply with me. I felt an electric connection to their narratives, a validation of the inner turmoil that had kept me awake at night. Engaging with these testimonies was eye-opening. It expanded my understanding of the world beyond the narrow vision in which I had been raised. I also found solace in a support group formed by those like me, individuals who had walked away from the confines of religion and toward the light of truth. They had become a lifeline amidst the chaos of my awakening. In our gatherings, we shared our fears and struggles openly. I felt a sense of camaraderie blooming in that space, an acceptance that I had never known before. I realized I was not alone in this journey. We were united by our shared experiences of betrayal, confusion, and ultimately, liberation. The warmth and support of this community helped to wash away some of the guilt I felt for leaving behind everything familiar. The fear of isolation began to dissipate. This group had become my new family, one that cherished love over doctrine. As I continued my exploration and engaged with my newfound friends, I was drawn further into discussions that opened my eyes to the broader implications of the hidden agenda that lay beneath societal norms. The manipulation of truth by those in power began to reveal itself in every narrative I had been fed. I started to understand the role of the elite in perpetuating conflict and division, using religion as a tool to keep the masses obedient and docile. The spiritual war was not just about faith. It was a battle for the hearts and minds of people worldwide. This urgency fueled my passion to not just understand these truths, but to share them openly, to inspire others to awaken from their slumber. With each passing day, my understanding deepened, and I was compelled to speak out. I began to challenge the fears that had kept me silent for so long, to articulate the truths I had uncovered. I could see the potential for change rippling through my community, an awakening that was waiting to happen. Though the path ahead was strewn with challenges and the risk of rejection loomed large, I felt invigorated. I was ready to fight for love and truth. My experiences shaped me, illuminating the way forward, urging me to act. The battle for my spirit had forged a resolve in me that couldn't be extinguished, and I embraced the calling I felt within, to be a beacon of hope for others, still caught in the grip of deception. In the wake of my awakening, I was left grappling with a profound realization. My experience was a divine calling that transcended my personal journey. I understood that it was my mission to testify about the truth I had encountered. The revelations Jesus had shared in the depths of my near-death experience echoed in my mind, urging me to step forward. It was tempting to remain silent, to retreat into the shadows of fear, but something deep within me screamed for action. I could no longer keep the transformative message of Jesus confined to my heart. The world needed to hear it. Nothing could shake the urgency I felt. I knew that testifying about this awakening meant exposing myself to potential rejection or even hostility. Yet the thought of others continuing to live under the shackles of deception fueled my determination. I could not ignore the hidden agenda I had come to understand, the manipulation that had long kept believers shackled in fear and confusion. The elite employed these mechanisms to maintain their grip over the masses, and it was time to break the chains and share the liberating truth I had found. Every time I closed my eyes, I envisioned a future where others could experience the same freedom I had discovered. My heart raced with the possibilities. The love and compassion of Jesus filled me with hope, an invitation to step into the light and challenge the systems that oppressed so many. I could see the faces of those who had been silenced, who felt lost and without a voice. It was a call to action, one that ignited a fire within me, compelling me to risk everything for the sake of awakening others to the truth. I began to conceptualize how I would share my journey. I started to write down my thoughts, documenting the struggles I had faced and the love that had set me free. In every word I poured my heart, hoping to reach those who felt the same deep void. I wanted my testimony to resonate, to awaken those still caught in the web of deception, to help them understand that they, too, could find their way out of the darkness. The message was clear. It was not about me, but rather about the collective awakening we needed to foster in a world plagued by division and fear. As I prepared to step onto this new path, the weight of the spiritual war hung heavy in my heart. I knew that sharing my story would ruffle feathers, shake the foundations of belief systems, and challenge the status quo, but I was ready to face the consequences. Every ounce of fear and doubt that had once held me back was being replaced by an unshakable determination to spread the truth. I understood that the work wouldn't be easy, but the urgency of my mission to raise awareness about the real implications of the hidden agendas in our societies pushed me forward. The awakening within me was not just my own. It was a light meant to guide others toward liberation and love. In a symbolic act of breaking away, I stood at the brink of a life-altering decision. The weight of my old existence pressed heavily on my shoulders as I prepared to cross the border of my country, leaving everything familiar behind. I was Farid, a name that echoed my past and the traditions I had once adhered to, but I knew that shedding that identity was essential for my rebirth. I had felt the sting of rejection from my family, the isolation of stepping away from everything I was taught, but the vision of freedom burned brightly in my heart, urging me forward. With each step, I distanced myself from the confines of expectation, ready to embrace a new name, a new identity, and a renewed commitment to serve and share the love of Jesus. The decision to leave was filled with both fear and exhilaration. I was acutely aware of the suffering and loss that awaited me. The loved ones I'd left behind would never understand my choices. In that moment of crossing over, I felt the chains of my existence snap. I was no longer bound by the life I had known, severing ties not just with a name, but with a deeply held belief system that had defined me since childhood. I could hear the whispers of my family's disappointment echoing in my mind, yet the voice of Jesus rang louder, reminding me of the truth that had been revealed to me. His message of love and awakening transcended the pain of separation. I was stepping into an unknown future, but it was one filled with hope, purpose, and potential. With my newfound identity, I absorbed every moment as a lesson, an awakening of sorts. I felt a divine calling urging me to share the revelations I had encountered during my near-death experience. No longer would I remain silent amidst the chaos of manipulation and deception that dominated our world. I began to seek out others who had faced similar struggles, People yearning for freedom from the hidden agendas that kept them locked in ignorance. Together we formed connections that were anchored in mutual understanding, a support system that had been unfathomable in my previous life. With each conversation, I witnessed the stirrings of awakening in their eyes, igniting a passion within me to drive the message of truth further. As I immersed myself in this new life, the stark contrast between my past and present ignited a fierce determination to serve. I began to evangelize, sharing my testimony in public spaces, allowing the truth of my journey to flow through me. I talked not just of Jesus, but of the spiritual war that raged within our society, a battle against the manipulation of the elite, who perpetuated division and deception for their gain. The urgency of my message became a call to action, echoing the revelations I had received. Each encounter fueled my resolve. I could feel the ripple effect of my words reaching into the hearts of others, stirring a collective desire to awaken from their slumber. Yet with all this fulfillment came a realization of the obstacles that lay ahead. Speaking out openly often invited backlash, criticism from those who clung to old beliefs and fear of retribution from those in power who sought to silence the truth. I understood that the journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but every ounce of fear was overshadowed by the love and conviction that now fueled my spirit. The connections I formed and the stories shared became an irrefutable testament to the awakening we were creating together. My path was fraught with challenges, but as I looked out at the faces of those who believed in the same cause, I realized that this was not just my battle. It was a collective fight for truth, a fight I was determined to lead. As I stand before you today, a new man forged in the fires of transformation, I want to leave you with a thought that still echoes within me. What if the truths you cling to are not the ultimate truths? What if there is an awakening waiting just beyond your understanding? One that calls for courage and change. I witness the invisible chains that bind so many in fear, and I've come to realize that every question we dare to ask is a step toward liberation. In the face of countless deceptions, we must understand that we are part of something vast, an intricate tapestry woven with countless souls yearning for truth and connection. The battle I faced is not just mine, it belongs to us all, echoing in the hearts of those who feel unseen and unheard. Who among you has felt the stirrings of doubt? Who has questioned the dogmas pressed upon them? Your story is vital too. I urge you to share your perceptions, your experiences, and let's ignite a conversation about the deeper realities that shape our existence. If this message resonates with you, don't close this chapter without subscribing to Truth from Beyond. By clicking that notification bell, you're not just staying informed. You're joining a community committed to awakening, a unified force against the shadows of ignorance and fear. The journey doesn't end here. It calls for each of us to seek the light, to challenge the narratives we've been fed, and to step boldly into our truth. In our next video, I will share the incredible story of another seeker, someone who found hope in the darkest of places. I believe their insights will further inspire you on your own path. Thank you for being part of this moment with me. I'm truly honored to share my journey. Remember, my name is Farid, and in this ever-unfolding quest for truth, we're not alone. Together, we can illuminate the way for countless others still trapped in the dark.